Hello, everyone. Today I have with me the developers, or part of the development team of Immortal Gates of Pyre. Could you each of you introduce yourself and tell us what you do at Immortal?
Hello, my name is Donovan. I am the creative director at Sunspirit Games, which emphasis on the director. I do some of the creative, but it's a lot of channeling the energy of a lot of very talented individuals to make the best product.
My name is Kwame Tempo Mensa. I am the community architect for Sunsphere Games. I'm here to make this space that we play this game in a welcoming, fun, and hey, even sometimes educational environment. Just a cool place to hang out. And yeah, that's what I do. I bring the vibes, man. That's what I do.
Nice.
Only the best vibes from Kwame. My name is Tom. I went by the name Jack Attack in the StarCraft circles. I do the user experience. I'm the user experience lead for Immortal. So I work on all the user interfaces, the controls of the game, the hotkeys, and thinking about reward systems and loops, and getting into that ethical space of how do we monetize and how do we do that in a good way and how do we do that in a not terrible way, and
Yeah.
things like that.
Important.
So, would you guys be able to give me a rundown of the history of Immortal Gates of Power, or the studio rather, and tell me how it came together, and yeah, and what led you to be part of the team?
Yeah, so this is actually one of the first external interviews we've had without one of the founders on, one of the official founders. But Donovan and I have been at it for a real long time. So we'll give you the satellite version of the story. So Coulter's one of the founders. He's the director of game. Coulter and I created the core in 2012 out of a unexplainable need to make things efficient. And so we built that. It was quite successful. It worked out. A few years later, Coulter met up with some folks on Team Liquid. I believe that's when Dylan came in, and started working on a mod called One Goal. And that was a mod where it was like, the idea wasn't to make a game. The idea was, hey Blizzard, we're going to do some R&D for you. We want to show you that these unit designs are really fun and cool, and then we hope that you'll use them in your game. Or we want to show you, hey, if the economy was different, we'd have a lot more fun expanding because it wouldn't feel so pressured to do it. It would feel more like an opportunity. And so just getting a lot into the different philosophies of strategy games and how they tend to work and where people kind of get snagged up, which was really cool. I wasn't really a part of that project. I was still working on the core, and sort of Coulter moved on. And I think that's about the time Donovan started getting involved. Was it just after One Goal, Donovan,
It
for you?
was immediately before we had actually launched the project, version 1.0.
Oh, excellent, cool. Please fill in the One Goal gaps. Yeah.
We came together. Dylan had posted a series of articles on Team Liquid and on the BattleNet forums talking about the identity of the three different like races in StarCraft and how they felt different from their StarCraft One incarnations. The one that as a Zerg player from Brood War, one of the ones that really resonated with me, like, hey, look at this in StarCraft 2, the second unit you get as the Swarm is a 2 supply unit compared to your 1 supply Hydralisk back in the day. And I'm like, that's true. That explains a lot of my feelings that I've had over the past however many. So I reached out, and we just got talking. We went in and we tried to see if we can introduce some new unit designs, modify tech trees a little bit, just to kind of get that feeling back from the StarCraft One factions without modifying the core systems too heavily. Was pretty successful. We did a lot of early R&D. It's kind of how I ended up cutting my teeth on RTS design in particular, outside of just playing StarCraft. And after a few years of that, I believe Dylan and Coulter ended up reaching out to Travis, who was working on the Starbow mod at the time. And that was the one that really went ham on, like, we're going to look at the economy, we're going to look at the pathing, and also Brood War units are cool. So we're just going to do all of that in a mod. And that was very successful. Travis is a very, very strong RTS mind. So that collaboration, those talks kind of started happening. We exchanged information and went into like ultra heavy R&D mode. And I believe, Tom, at this point, moving into Vanguard is when you came in, yeah?
Yeah. So I had been away making content, meeting Kwame, actually. Kwame doesn't come into the Sunspear part of the story just yet, but meeting Kwame and actually writing out lyrics for songs that were never recorded, but they were really good lyrics, and they were well, man, it's going to happen someday. Don't you worry.
I brought this up actually yesterday. We have a Google document, and I think it's about 43 pages long. Just to
Yep. Yeah, that was the life of the content creator that we were living at that time, where it's just like a million ideas, a million videos you want to make, and you're like, well, I got to make one today, or like, over the next few days or whatever. It's like I can't make them all. And but yeah, so I was doing the content creator thing, and there was another little project called Raise in there at some point, so I hopped in and did like 2 or 3 videos on my channel for Raise. So I kind of became at that point, in what was to be called Sunspear, the first marketing person, because I was basically the only person who had any experience with social media or making content or anything like that. So I was like, okay, this is how I can be helpful to the project. So after Raise was Vanguard, and Vanguard was when basically the whole team was together, working on the whole design team, pretty much working on a game. And the goal was no longer, okay, we want to show these cool ideas. The goal was like, okay, how do we make the next, what does the next great game have? The next great game is probably spectatable. The next great game is probably really easy to learn and hard to master,
Right.
and started laying down those kind of criteria and really thinking about how do we create the next great game and what does it look like? Totally departing from RTS, being like, whatever it looks like, that's what it looks like. We're going to build this thing, and through, a lot of, research and development, we ended up coming on, the formula that Vanguard used, and then that we've been evolving and changing and growing through with Immortal. But yeah, and so Vanguard, that's kind of what I was doing. I was using my content creator reach and skills to make content about Vanguard, to stream Vanguard, to talk to people in the StarCraft community I knew about Vanguard, and I was just like I was the news boy on the street, be like, Vanguard, read all about it. Get over here. It's this great new game. You guys should check it out. It's a really cool mod. Just kind of screaming from the top of my lungs, not really knowing how to properly get attention. But that's what it is. It was just a lot of energy, and goodwill, and lots of mistakes and figuring stuff out along the way. But yeah,
I
I
imagine
think
it
that
worked
kind of wraps
because
it up.
because like look what you guys got.
Yeah.
Actually, there's something I wanted to bounce off of on all that, is that in all this, you guys, I see you here. I imagine sitting at home and everything, and I'm thinking, so this is a work from home kind of setup with people from just all around the world, and like, or I don't know, maybe you guys are mostly in the US and stuff. But personally, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart, as somebody who did the same, composed a company out of people who never met each other physically. And I think that's like a really beautiful thing. So what's that been like on the job kind of side of things?
Well, it was particularly interesting for me, because when I officially joined the company, we created the company, I think, in like 2017, and we had a couple of times we all met up together, and otherwise we're all working from home, right? But 2020 was when we really started gathering people together in the Rogue Valley, which is in Southern Oregon, United States. And yeah, at this point we're really spread out. The thing I wanted to mention, though, is basically I drove from Rhode Island, which is where I'm from, And if you don't know U.S. geography, it's the complete other side.
Oh, that way.
It is just, hey, hop on this International Highway 80 and keep going west. That's it. That was the route, Um, and I drove basically while all the shutdowns were happening, and it was just the beginning of the pandemic. So I left, populated Rhode Island, normal, everything. And then I drove across over the course of 5 days or so. And those 5 days were just everything, the hotels were empty, the restaurants were empty, everything was starting to happen. And then I arrived in Southern Oregon and stayed in the house for a year.
It's like Battle Royale. I figured the circle was closing, Jack Attack was traveling across the state, and the circle was closing.
The pandemic is coming. I gotta get to Oregon to work on the game before it's over.
Yeah.
I just
It's
died
like an
in my
apocalypse
door.
movie.
COVID-19's grabbing at my feet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was wild. We made it. And we're actually quite spread out. We have people, I think 12 at least different countries: India, Australia, New Zealand, a lot of different places in Europe, and South America. So yeah, we got people all over the place. Yeah,
definitely. Awesome. So yeah, do you guys mind if we get into more specific questions, more technical questions, I guess? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I wanted to ask, what's it like developing with a tournament ongoing?
Yeah.
Oh man. So
that's a beautiful question. Yeah. I think Kwame, you wanna?
It's so Seamus is our guy when it comes to the competitive landscape. And it has been a bit of a, challenge, right? Because we need to have a stable build, right, for competitive purposes and fairness. But at the same time, we're so early in development that, anything can change. But we try to make it so that people that are practicing for a tournament that has, say, money on the line, are going to be the tournament that they play in, and the game that they are presented with, and say, hey, this is what you got to work with on the day of the tournament, is the one that they were practicing for. So when it comes to that, Travis actually and a lot of the tech team will make a stable build, right? And this is the one maybe 2 weeks in advance. That is going to be the one for, say, the monthly. And they've been, we talked about this for a bit, and how to actually do it. And so far so good, let's just say, right? At least the builds have been stable. Number one priority is to make sure that it's not broken, right? Like people can get into games. But it also comes with the kind of tough, I guess, landscape of, is the game at a place where it's balanced enough that one build is, or one faction or one immortal is not dominating at the time either, right? So it's a bit of it's a tough game, I would say, but I think so far it's been good, right? Like people are discovering things that there's not a set meta, but there are different things that are presented in the tournaments, right? And we find them out during the actual day of the event, which is awesome.
Yeah, I do think one of the cool things about having tournaments while developing is that, and we saw it on the first time we put prize pool into a tournament, which we had been putting off for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we expected it to change player behavior a lot, and it did. We had some crazy builds, some ridiculously abusive stuff that people figured out because they were incentivized to, and we found all kinds of just bad play patterns that we didn't want to happen that were happening. We're like, okay, great, cool. Okay, so when it's really down to it, this is how they're gonna do their thing, right?
Exactly. It's better to weed those things out.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we call our tournament "Break the Game," the weekly tournament, "Break the Game," and we mean it, and that's what it's about, right? We want to find all the ways that the game is broken, so that we can learn, so that we can make the experience more solid, better. and all
Competitive
that.
players will do that. They'll find the
Especially our
that
community.
nasty little trick that they can do that's completely broken.
Yeah, we have a community member named Santa. Shout out to Santa, who looks for games and looking for game channel like, hey, does anyone want to play a game? I definitely don't have an awful scary build that I just cooked up.
He always does.
He always does.
The other fun side of that, like double-edged sword, is like we get the data, and it's a little bit of a it's we have some technical stuff to kind of navigate around, but also we get to see the game start to develop in just like see how things start shaking out. Right, we've been doing a lot of theory, we've been putting together all these numbers for a pretty long time. We're introducing more stuff all the time. It's like, hey, it's now in the environment. We're seeing it happen. At some point, really early on, this was like when we still had like half a faction in. There was a meta developing, and that's when things like solidified for me, where it's like, oh my god, there's a meta in this half-baked faction. What the hell's going on?
Yeah,
Actually, that
it's a
leads
really
me
big moment where you
to
start having those conversations that you had about StarCraft, but about the game that you're making. I was just like, oh, it's like, oh yeah, absolvers are really strong right now. It's like, yeah, well, I feel like you have to like get them in the right position. It's like, yeah, but even still, it's like, I was like, where am I? What
Wait a
am I?
minute.
What's going on? This is the game I'm making. What's happening? This is crazy.
Yeah, that's really cool. Actually, that leads me to another question: is like, what do you guys do when you have something like a meta forming, and now it's not just something that's yours; it's also something that's the community's, right? And do you go in there and be like, okay, I'm gonna smash that meta, or are you like, okay, now I have to kind of work around that, or just be careful when not to change things too much. And I personally would commend the courage, I don't know, to just go in there and smash it, because you never know, maybe you're in some kind of a small valley, but you haven't like discovered all that's out there, and it's worth taking that risk. And on the flip side, maybe you upset the whole community, so it's a tough juggling act, I imagine.
Yeah. So the one of the things we kind of talk about pretty frequently is exactly like what kind of play patterns were. I love this in sync drinking down there. One of the play patterns we're kind of looking for is or rather, we're analyzing play patterns, and we want to make sure, okay, this is the kind of stuff that we know we want to see in the game. There's not specific strategies that we need to see, but there's certain dynamics that we want to make sure we're kind of reinforcing, and there's other dynamics that are kind of toxic, and we want to make sure we're kind of weeding out. And that's more what we kind of lean into when we're like looking at what kind of metas we want to encourage and which ones we want to like just like smash with a huge hammer. Is
Yeah.
this like healthy for the game? Is it fun and is it healthy? If yes, then we want to make sure we preserve those dynamics. And if it's causing problems, that's where we start looking at things like, okay, this could be an issue. How do we tackle this? Do we hit this hard, or do we kind of like go in and surgically like remove like the key component that makes this work? Um, Different things for different situations. And some of them are more difficult than others because there's a couple of situations that come up where it's like, well, these interactions create a dynamic that are exactly what we're looking for, except for this one thing which is horrifically toxic. It's the worst thing. It's like, okay, like, what's like the one? Where do we like make that like cut?
I
Yeah.
think
That's interesting.
just
Yeah.
to make it a bit of give it a bit of an example, we've got this hero, this immortal Zol, and she is powerful and awesome, and she does a great hunt, and she's at the head of this like pack of hunters, and it's awesome. We're like, all right, cool. We're gonna make a model for Zol. She's gonna be on the battlefield. She's gonna do some cool stuff, right? First thing people do with Zol is teleport her into a mineral line and kill a bunch of workers, and we're just like, ah, crap. It's
Wait a
it's
minute.
so
Yeah.
funny. It's so funny how often I remember this happening in StarCraft too. How often we're like, okay, we'll give a players this tool. They could do anything with it. What do they do? It's just like, whoop, kill workers. It's like, no, crap. Anything, anything. If anything is good at killing workers, it immediately becomes like, all right, that's what you got to do. You got to kill workers.
Yeah. Trying to avoid
So yeah.
the warhound syndrome, right? Like
Mm,
it's
hmm
like but at the end of the day too, right? It's about saying, can we have this kind of ability work still, right? Without it being abusive. And then if it is abusive in like a way, is there an easy way to deal with it that's not like something like that'll totally throw off, say, the player that's defending like their game plan? Like imagine you're building your base and then all of a sudden Zola like 2 minutes comes in there and is just like picking off all your workers. That'll kind of ruin
Yeah.
your whole game, right? As a new player, even. Um, so it's about tweaking stuff like that. So maybe like the timer or the Pyre generation, like different kind of things like that, in order to make it so that it's not so impactful so early that your whole game experience is ruined. And
Have you guys found like yeah? Have you guys found like general use case wisdom that you can apply as a general rule to how you balance and patch things? Methodology to respect and from all that you've learned has surfaced as the way to go.
One thing before Donovan gets into it, because Donovan's going to get into it, I can feel it. One thing that I really took away as not someone who's super into doing the balance and the numbers for the game, more on the feels side of things, is that we have a philosophy of thinking about balance in the game and the meta as an ecosystem, and that you need to have all the different animals in that ecosystem for it to work and for it to be balanced. And we're not trying to make everything homogenous. So there's one of each type of build, and that's it, right? Like, and we're also not wanting to make things too, invasive species. There's just one species that's so strong that kills everything else. Well, that's no fun, right? Because we're ultimately trying to provide a variety of experiences. So yeah, thinking about it as an ecosystem rather than like a problem that needs to be solved is definitely helpful philosophically for me.
I get what you're saying. It feels like that's really particularly relevant in the case of a work in progress game where you don't yet have the full ecosystem. So there might be the ability to really adequately test that once all the pieces are in place. But there has to be first, maybe follow the vision of the balancer through to its conclusion, and then judge it, right? And rather than overreact to every little thing as the ecosystem is being put together, right? Yeah.
There have been a lot of discussions.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. A lot of discussions have been truncated with, this mechanic isn't in yet, and this actually fixes that thing. And everyone's like, that's true. Let's hold off on that. One of the things we do to actually like do the balancing thing is pretty much the same thing that we kind of run into with just generally unit design, faction design. It's a process that we call criteria-based design. I'm sure other people use it. I don't know. Effectively, it's okay. Here's the thing that we've identified that we need to be looking at. This is our problem space. We're gonna figure out exactly like what the problems are that we need to be solving, and then we're gonna lay down what are the criteria that our solution has to hit. We need to make sure that it's promoting the dynamics that we want. There's a specific problem that we need to make sure we eliminate, and there are other things that we need to make sure that aren't touched by this. Maybe we need to make sure we're trying to stay within a certain constraint of existing art. So we want to make sure that we are keeping our solutions in the general space of stuff that already exists, or maybe it's a little bit more broad. And after we lay down the criteria, then we just kind of start going down with, okay, with all that in mind, here are the levers we can pull, and here's some of the wackier stuff we can try if those levers aren't really like doing the thing we're wanting to do. A lot of our meetings when it comes to addressing those issues pretty much kind of goes down that list, just to make sure that it helps to lay down like exactly where that like surgical cut needs to be made, or maybe the problem space is so broad and the criteria is so open that we can just smash and try a new thing.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, getting to what's testable is an important little mantra in the design department. It's not about finding what we're sure is going to work. It's just like, is this testable? It's like, yep, all right, good, we're done. We're moving on to the next conversation, right? We We don't want to get to that area of diminishing returns where it's like, all right, well, we're going to theorize this on paper until we're 99.99999% sure the play pattern will result. It's like, no, just put it in the ecosystem, let it play with the other things. If it gets eaten by the sharks, it's not strong enough. We need to make it stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
nothing beats terrain like actual testing. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
Who is it that it's almost like that, you know, even if something is like too broken, it's like make something that's even more broken, right? And it's like
the old Dota
there's a
2
shark
philosophy.
in there, throw in yeah, exactly. And it's like
if everything's broken, nothing is broken.
Yeah, and it's like what extent do you want to push that to, right? And I think we had a big update actually with the Immortal presence and a lot of their abilities being changed. And we just asked the community and say, hey, is this, you know, fun to play? And we'll get that feedback. You know, people are very passionate in this community and they'll say like, no, this freaking sucks, right? Like, or say like, no, it kind of is crazy, but you know what? We had the most epic game because of it. But it's like, okay, now we kind of ease a little bit, right? Instead of trying to chop and smash, it's more like, okay, kind of just expand that just a little bit and see what limit we can push it to without making it a bad experience. I guess at the end of the day would be
we want to cook up some weird stuff, but we don't want it to taste bad, you know?
Yeah, there we go.
We want to give you guys
like
new flavors, tastes that you hadn't before. We want to be creative, we want to be fun, and if it ends up tasting bad, we want to know. We want to be like, all right, that dish isn't quite working out. It needs to be flavored a little bit differently, you know?
Like when we're not the parents at Thanksgiving where it's like, all right.
yeah. Eat this. It's good for you. It's like, that's not what we're here for. You know, we're making a video game. This
green
is for fun.
beans are black. But yeah, I think that's what we've been getting so far, at least from the community. So like me being a community architect, I kind of go in and ask people and play and get feedback. Gathering feedback is like my number one thing. And then sometimes I'll ask, you know, like somebody can complain about something, but you know, it's more of a pool of people saying their, you know, the collective experiences, and then you kind of say, okay, generally this seems okay, right? If most people are saying this sucks or it's just not fun, right? Or completely broken to the point where it's like, oh, well, why would I do anything else if I could do this? Then you know that's a problem, right? It's like there's so many other options, but I choose not to do these options because this is so much better and superior. You know, there's so many options that this is so bad that I would never touch it with like a 10-foot pole. So it's like two different opposite sides of the spectrum that you kind of want to bring together in a way.
Well, it's one of the advantages of having the community that we have. Everyone is very skeptical and critical and analytical, and very honest and just straight up. It's just like, if I think this sucks, I'm going to tell you, this sucks, you know? And for us, we're doing the absolute best that we can to establish a reputation of accepting it all. Like, give us the hate, give us the good stuff, just whatever the truth is. Don't give us extra hate that's not actually there. Don't give us extra love that's not actually there. Just give us the truth. And the more truth that you give us, the better game that we get to make, because that's actually what's really going on.
How did you guys go about adding loot boxes to co-op and PvE mode?
So loot boxes is something we're very, 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 very careful with because, you know, we well play games. The main focus that we want to put into the PvE systems is Diablo 2 is a fun game. Being able to like pick up stuff and like customize your character, in this case, like your army in like a Warhammer kind of a way, where it's like, I want to, you know, I found this cool little spear. I'm going to put this spear on these Safari, and now they're going to be better at burning down those darn tree people. It's a cool feeling to have those kinds of interactions and being able to put those things together. Broadly speaking, we want to lean into that Diablo-esque, like ARPG style. You kill stuff, and based on the stuff that you kill, the objectives you achieve, etc., you're going to end up with a smattering of things. These should be interplaying with our progression systems and the way that we're designing the actual co-op maps, in kind of a StarCraft 2 co-op fashion, to kind of acted similar to the way that mutators do in StarCraft 2, where it's like this is a change to the gameplay, this is a change to the faction that you're playing, in a meaningful way that can alter your strategy. And in that ARPG fashion, if you're getting the right loot and you're equipping the right units with the right stuff and you're doing this right, you could just break it. You could just break everything. And it's co-op, so it's fine. A big part of the fun is like finding the things that just like totally like throw the ecosystem out of whack, because it's fun to do that. It's fun to like walk into a room and be like, I'm gonna go AFK for 7 minutes, and when I come back, everything's dead.
Right.
So that's the kind of that's the flavor we're kind of shooting for with that system.
Yeah.
And in particular, like I mentioned, we want to be very careful with loot boxes. We don't want to stray any further into loot box territory past like that feeling of like Magic the Gathering packs, where it's like you open up the pack, here's some stuff. But in our case, we don't want people to be able to buy the packs, because that can introduce some unhealthy behaviors and relationships with the game. They're things that you can earn. They're not things that you can dump an infinite amount of money into, because that's very predatory. We've seen a lot of issues arise from games that do that.
Yeah, that
Absolutely.
really is one of the key issues is setting up the monetization system where we can have separated areas where certain things are allowed and certain things are not. And so paying for loot boxes infinitely is not allowed. We will design a system where that does not happen. There are many, many systems we can make work with that constraint. It's not too tricky. And so it's difficult because we are trying to make a compelling experience. This is a video game. Our job is to make something that captures your attention and, it hopefully brings you lots of joy and insight and excitement and things like that. But since we are capturing your attention, there are certain ways of doing that can cause outsized amounts of harm. And we need to always be aware of new ones cropping up, new systems, new ways that those abuses can happen, and building our systems in ways that will be resistant to that. And one of the easiest rules is no endless loot boxes, because if it's endless, all you need to do is get a handle on a credit card and get yourself into some debt as a 13-year-old, just, casual, couple $1,000s in debt as a 13-year-old. No big
I
deal.
got
Your
into that when
parents
I was
find
8
out.
years old.
Oh, damn.
And so it's important to understand that we are making, if we do our jobs right, we're making a really compelling experience. And if we're compelling a lot of people, that means that we have a responsibility to do good things with that time. And as the user experience general philosophy is that we ultimately are trying to create patterns of behavior that are fun and healthy for players and that are profitable for us. We need to hit all of those things. Otherwise, it doesn't go in the game.
I want to ask you about your PvE replayability philosophy. What do you have in mind?
Yeah, so that kind of leans into what we've been talking about, with the benefits of like that flavor of like Diablo ARPG style loot. That's a big component of it, is being able to go in, do the thing, knock some stuff out, and then you have a bunch of loot that you can equip the army with. You gain some experience on the Immortal that can help branch out into like different flavors of the character than what you get in the PvP experience, which is much more curated for the competitive environment. Again, similar to what StarCraft 2 co-op does, is very, very strong in this regard, because you have progression. You also have the meta progression, where you kind of loop through like a very specialized version of that commander, and you have mutators, which kind of throw on top of that. So we want to take a lot of those elements and mix them in with a lot of the elements from what you see in games like Path of Exile, from games like Diablo 2, a little bit of XCOM, because that's more like squad-based tactical than character-based. And putting all those elements together gives you a strong level design within co-op, which means you're able to bring your friends in and play and come up with interesting strategies where all of the cool customization stuff that you've been doing and all the cool customization stuff that they've been doing can be comboed up together to do even more goofy, broken stuff, because that's the fun way to play games. Um, because I play Blue in Magic the Gathering.
Scalp Plexus.
And that's kind of the like core loop experience that we really want to tap into. And ideally, as the system kind of forms out, we also want to introduce some in our missions, because you're playing as a specific character in the world, specific commander. We want to also seed out story elements into these areas as well. The co-op missions are broadly built in a way that can happen theoretically. Any like character immortal can kind of come into these situations and play through these stories, and there is a series of events where you can lead into these kind of unlikely alliances and unlikely like rivalries. Emphasizing that, having dialogue for certain immortals that are more or less likely to end up in those situations, teamed up with other immortals that add more depth to the experience, and kind of letting players explore the space where we've kind of mapped out these are the very likely things that could happen. And then for other players who are more creative and kind of want to just like get into like the like role playing of like I'm this particular commander, letting them come up with the stories with their friends of, hey, this is how my guy and your gal came together and like started doing this thing, even though like it's so wildly like, how does this even happen? Like letting people develop those stories and headcanons is huge value. It's so much fun to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think a really cool part is that like there is so much lore behind it too, right? Like people can use their imaginations to such a crazy degree, because I think uniquely when I came on too, I was so surprised how deep and actually developed, and also how much thought really went into the world, and then also the characters within it. But then not just like the big guys, like the immortals themselves, but the little guys, right? Like there are going to be, short stories and all these different like tabletop, like different kinds of ways to really get into the game itself and immerse yourself within the universe. And outside of
Actually,
that,
is there going to be a campaign as well? I'm not in the know.
So campaign is something that we absolutely want to have. It's also a big resource dump. Like the to create a really strong like campaign in the style of what you get with like Blizzard games, really strong resonance, very high polished level, takes a lot of dedicated art assets. Some of them can be kind of used as art, sound, SFX, voice acting, level design. Some of those can kind of be reused in a multiplayer environment. A lot of them can be reused in co-op, so we have a little bit of overlap there. But a lot of these things, in order for it to really hit where it needs to hit, it has to be it has to be fresh and like tailor made for this specific circumstance. And it's kind of difficult to squeeze those into other positions. So at some point, yes, we want to have different campaigns for different factions that you can kind of explore the possibility space for.
Yeah, I feel
it may be a while
it's
till
the
we
same
get
struggle for me. Like campaign, too much work right now.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when you're creating a whole bunch of assets that the player is only going to ever see probably once in the playthrough of the campaign, and then maybe if they're an achievement grinder, they go back a couple more times, or if they're a really big player of the campaign, they like it. But it's like compared to, hey, we need to make a mountain of cosmetic stuff because we're a free to play game, and just the sheer amount of content that has to be made for a game like this. All of a sudden it's like, hey, do you want to make something that we can sell over and over again, that people can use over and over again for the rest of the life of the game? Or do you want to make this really cool set piece for this awesome level that everyone's going to play once? And it's like, yes, we 100% want to do that because that experience is awesome. And we need to be able to afford it, basically.
Yep. On the flip side of that, to make sure that we are satisfying all of the creative needs and storytelling opportunities, not by a creative director, we really want to shoot for. We want to make sure that we like really load up that co-op experience with narrative opportunities. Everything in the co-op, we want to avoid the feeling of this is a mission that was designed for a game, and we want to make sure that every mission at least has enough meat on the bones to be like, this is a battle that does happen somewhere in the timeline, and letting people kind of go through those battles and experience those in different ways, and start piecing together like the events of the opening of the gates, and that all of the chaos that erupts after that. That's going to be the early like narrative buy-in for a lot of players.
I think
Right.
to add to that too, we're looking to bake the story and the lore into every part of the game. So recently I was talking with Dylan about just the PvP matches. So it's like, all right, people are having these endless PvP matches on this map that's symmetrical over and over again. How much justification are we doing, and how much are we saying, hey, this is a game, you guys got to recognize that it's a game. And so each map is going to have a real location in the world. And it's going to have real historical significance. And for the most part, the reason why people are fighting over maps is resources, because resources are valuable. That's why we do the fighting most of the time, right? We want more resources. But also there may be strategic objectives or historical narrative objectives that are happening. So the reason Orzum might be on that map could be special, right? And so if you're playing Orzum and you load in that map, you're going to get a voice line that you're not going to get in any other situation, and you're going to get a little piece of that lore. Or if you're playing Orzum and Mala's on your team and you're on this map, there's actually a story where they were on the same team, right? So as you play through all these iterations of multiplayer, you're going to get little sneak peeks into the worlds and the characters and the lives of everything, right? And so that's just an example of how we're going to put more lore into multiplayer. But we're looking to do that everywhere, in the UI, in the UX, in the gameplay, in the art. It's really, we want to make a completely integrated experience.
Yeah, I can see that you guys are like really dedicated to lore. Like it's personally me, the lore of a game. It's a thing that I go like, I don't really care. I'm kind of past that, right? But I know that like a lot of players, they go in and they want to know every little detail, and it's super duper important to them. And I'm like, okay, all right, but you guys are like really, I guess, way like motivated by it, and I can see that. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Like
Actually,
for
I'll tell you a small
Stop by.
secret.
I was gonna say,
Real
stop
quick,
by
I'll tell you a
Town
small
Hall with
secret.
Dylan.
One, Dylan gives town halls and he'll tell you everything about the lore. He'll tell you what the word for pineapple is. That literally happens. I also personally don't care about lore at all when I'm playing a game. It could be a bunch of gray boxes, and if the puzzle's interesting to me, I'm in. My favorite game is chess. I love chess. It's beautiful and elegant, and it just creates infinite stories, and it's wonderful. And being next to Donovan and Dylan and all these creative folks and participating in our community makes it so easy for me to understand the value of baking lore into everything and integrating it, and the value of creating those experiences. And although I don't actually experience it myself, it's still really important for me. It's even more important for me, really, because I have a bias against it, right? To make sure that I am incorporating, that into everything that I can.
How do you go about telling a story in an RTS where factions don't take turns being the winner?
I feel like I'm taking the spotlight here. Blizzard RTSs are wonderful. We all grew up on them. The storytelling, like narrative structure that they employ is broadly, for people who haven't played, you play one faction and then you move into the next set of events with another faction, and then you move into the next set. And because you're the player character in that section of the story, that faction is just winning. It's always winning. There's a little bit more nuance with that in the original StarCraft, where like at the end of the first campaign, you kind of set up a fascist dictatorship. It's fine, don't worry about it. But it has that, like, for the most part, it's like you always win at the end of every campaign. So every faction has their own like turn being the people who are winning the video game. That story structure is fantastic. I think it really like innovated a lot and drove a lot of narrative like stakes into RTS as a genre. Where prior to that, most RTSs were ran with the storytelling device of this is a video game, but whatever the fuck faction you pick is just going to win everything forever. That turned out to be unsustainable when they realized sequels existed and they had to figure out how they kept fighting after everyone won everything. But there's a lot of value in having there's two kind of like big valuable things in avoiding the everyone takes their own turn winning. Because Blizzard did this so well and it kind of propagated into a lot of RTS storytelling moving forward, it now feels a little bit kind of gamey and contrived to make sure that all of these factions, everyone has to have a turn. Everyone has to, there can't be a faction that's just in the wrong place, wrong time, bad decisions, they just get stomped out. That kind of thing can happen, and that adds a lot of texture to the narrative behind conflicts. We want to keep the doors for that kind of stuff open, and we also want to. Players should win. They should never be the faction being stopped. So you can't have a Terran 2 campaign where you just lose everything. You win the mission and then actually your whole force got wiped out when you were looking the other. You can't really do that in storytelling. It feels
we're
bad.
making an April Fool's campaign.
I know. I was gonna say. Every time you pick Mala, you literally win and then you lose, right? It's like, oh, by the way, actually, Mala doesn't win. By the way, you just kill the last building and take defeat.
So one of the things we want to the way we want to try and solve this is built into the foundation of the lore is the idea that everything after a certain point is no longer set in stone, this is what happens. It opens up into possibility space. All of the thousands of years of history, blah, 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 everything that kind of leads up to year zero of the gates open and everything just goes to crazy. That's where the players putting their hands on things starts to actually make decisions. In the world, we have a number of characters that have the ability to see various timelines and ways that things can unfold, the glimpses of the different futures. All of these different futures can exist, and whenever a player puts their hand on that mouse and keyboard, they are effectively manifesting that timeline into existence. It is a thing that really happens, and there are consequences if you look further down that timeline. If in a future where Karath wins, right, the initial conflict, War of the Gates, they beat the Aru, they conquer Telmetra, they overcome Jorah, all of they do the thing. There is more story after the war is done that we want to be able to come back to at some point and explore. Okay, the Theocracy one, what does that look like? The Iron Republic of Jorah, just all of their democracy just got thrown out the window. What's the situation there now? How does that expand past that? And we have that for pretty much every possible faction win. And we also have that for every every immortal in each faction is also vying for their own goals. So Ajari winning Karath is very different outcome from Orzum winning Karath. How they interact with the losers in that conflict are very different. So opening up that possibility space, exploring the various timelines that can branch out of this inciting incident is a big part of how we want to make sure to tell the story. And also, when you click the "I'm going to play the campaign" button, you are going to win, and you're going to see exactly how, what that thread is to victory.
All right. I see. So yeah, okay. You guys want to prioritize the freedom of each player to get to experience their faction winning, and yeah, okay. That is something that makes the work on the lore, I imagine, a lot harder. But yeah, I mean, it's much better payoff, I guess, for the player.
It's one of the reasons that we gone so hard on the background and history of the world, because if you already have all the pieces kind of in place, when you start okay, we know everything that leads up to this point. What happens if you go that direction? Well, at that point, it's almost just dominoes. If we know, okay, Orzum, in this situation, this is the timeline where Orzum has to win. What things have to line up? What goals does he have to shatter through? Who does he have to break first? We can there's a joy in kind of discovering the story as we're creating it, not just because this is the thing where Orison wins, but it's like, this is how does this happen? We don't know that, but we know everything around that. So let's see like what dominoes have to knock into what, and what are the effects that come out of that. It actually makes it a lot easier since we've done a lot of the upfront work already.
And so, what about the act of transitioning from a team of modders to a team of professional game devs? What's that like?
Oh man. I'll tell you that it starts with an application called Calendar. I'll tell you that. When we began, all right, we were, 20-something-year-olds out in the space trying to, being passionate as heck, trying to make money, be in esports or be in gaming somehow. Not really having an official normal path to game dev, just trying to be involved in games. And uh, we did things like create criteria-based design. Interesting. And all these other stuff. And we're like, we've got this stuff figured out. We've got these great new ideas that are new and no one's thought of them before. And then we met Kevin. And Kevin worked at Sega for decades and a bunch of other places and ran huge companies and all this other stuff. And so Kevin has a little bit of experience compared to us. And we learned very, very quickly that criteria-based design is essentially just the way that really good companies operate when they've got good people and they're working well. They align on the problem before they jump to figuring out the solutions. They agree that the solution has to do a certain set of things, and then they work together to create that solution. It's just like we came up with that, in our basements, talking to each other, trying to figure out how human beings should be better organized or how to agree with each other, right? We're like, but we've got all these strong opinions and good ideas. How do we figure out a path forward, And we kind of just hyperbolic time chambered that thing out. And so a lot of the philosophies that we came up with were like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, people do that. That's great. It works because of these reasons. And we got to learn more about them. And a lot of our bad habits had to get destroyed, like showing up late to meetings and not responding to emails, and just like the basic normal stuff that when you're working at whatever job that you're not invested in, typing into spreadsheets like I was doing for a bit before this, you know, you don't, you're like, yeah, if I get to that email late, it's whatever, it's okay. When all of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm a leader in this company and there are 40 people here that are looking at my behavior and what I do and then deciding what's okay and what's not okay based on that, for the most part. It's like, if I show up 2 minutes late to a meeting, that's a problem, right? That's like the kind of thing that shifted in my head, whereas before it's just like, hey, we're having fun, we're making a game, it's relaxed, it's good, we don't want to bring any harsh vibes into the space. But it's like, shit's got to get done, and that means people need to show up on time. If you got 7 people in the meeting waiting for 2 minutes, that's 14 minutes. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when everybody's doing it, it's like, the difference between 14x amount of work that you're going to get done if everyone's showing up on time and responding to emails. Learning how to prioritize, really, really important. Making sure that, and it's a build order thing, right? It's an RTS thing. Like, we know as RTS players that the order in which you do things is really freaking important. And if you build your supply depot later or earlier, the whole rest of the build is messed up. Well, it's like, guess what? That's a company. That's how it works. If I'm not building my supply depot in time, then you don't get to build your barracks because it's a prerequisite. And so the build order of a company matters, and like learning that was just one of the many, many, many lessons that we got from Kevin and other folks that we've brought on with more experience in the company, in the running of a company.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole thing, I imagine it's like a pretty difficult shift for a lot of people who before they were in the gamer space modding. You're just as you said, you're just having fun and everything. and now you got to be professional, but you get kind of confused because you're still kind of in that gaming space and everything. And so people are like, but like, what's the problem? Like, isn't it the same? And no, not really. So I imagine it's kind of like hard to get that across. But yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Right,
challenges. I think one of the big ones, especially for folks like me and Donovan and the founders who have just been here forever, is control. In the beginning, right? It was mostly, Coulter and Dylan and Donovan just being in a time chamber, talking through stuff, figuring stuff out, learning stuff. And they had all the decision about what units we would test and what we would do and how they would look and all these other thoughts, right? And Coulter's got to do 5 different jobs, and Dylan's got to do 3 different jobs, and right. So everyone's stacking
Everyone wears
hats,
so many hats.
right?
Yeah, the hats.
And
That's why I
so
brought my hat today, by the way.
that's it. It's all about we got visual. All right, it's very good. And so one of the weird things is like it can be really nice taking off a hat of responsibility and being like, hey, Tom, who's just improvising marketing for the past 3 years, here you go. Someone who knows what they're doing. Ah, that's very nice. That's fantastic. Feels good. But also, I used to read every single thing on social media about the game and us, and every single thing that our community posted at any point in time in anywhere. I used to be completely 100% connected to everything that was going on. And when I took that hat off, it was really hard to be like, hey, I need to prioritize my other hats. This used to be a useful activity because I was wearing this hat. It's not anymore. I know you really like to do it, but it's very inefficient time. It's a very inefficient way to spend time. It's like, nope, you gotta put that away. And sometimes watching, it's like I used to run the tournaments and the community events, right? And so now that's been passed off to Kwame and Seamus and some other folks, and sort of like not jumping in and taking over because that's what I used to run that, right? And so learning how to let go of those things and trust the other person and allow them the chance to fail, basically. Learning how to do that has been tricky. I think I'm better at it now than I used to be, and I think I could still get better at it.
You're really good.
And you're speaking to things that are like, really, it hits home for me because I'm the guy who's like wearing all those hats, especially all the socials and stuff for Sanctuary, and so I'm like, I would be super worried of letting that giving that hat to somebody else and how well they do with it and everything. But it's probably gonna have to happen at one point, right? And so I feel I feel super scared and everything just hearing you describe it. That I feel like it's very, very daunting.
Unless
but
you're Toby Fox with Undertale, but other than that,
yeah, I think
I
it's
met him on the train before.
But like in the end, like more more people can always do more work than just one person, right? And that's just a like it's simple math. You can't really get around that. So you have to at one point get that reality into your head and be like, okay, yeah, we have to spread the tasks and it'll work better.
Yeah, well, and the funny thing is, I spend more and more and more time communicating and less time making things. Because now it's so important. It used to just be, oh, I got it in my head, and be like, hey, Tom, you got that? Like, oh yeah, I got the whole thing in my head. I know exactly what I want to do. It's gonna be fine, and I could just run it because it was just me. Now it's like, okay, it's great into your head, Tom, but you have to get that written out in a way that other people are gonna understand, or talk that out in a meeting in a way that people are gonna understand, so they can run with it, and they don't need you to be like, oh yeah, it's all in my head. I got it. Just ask me. I know. I've already figured it out. Because that doesn't work anymore. So now it's like, okay, it used to be important that I could just do the thing and that people could count on me to do the thing. And now it's still important that I do that, of course. But now it's also so important that I'm able to really effectively communicate all of the ideas and the thoughts in my head so that they're maximally useful for everyone else,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is
All
tricky.
right. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. Does anybody want to add to that, or is that fully answered?
As a big part of it. Like switching from hey, I'm gonna like take my like half hour like bus ride back from school to like figure out how to make a corruptor with an ability that is like involved. That was a fun day. To like, okay, now I actually have to like, I need to be on top of things. I have a bunch of responsibilities. I need to make sure that all of this stuff gets done so that all of these other departments are able to do all of their jobs. Like the acceptance of responsibility is probably the biggest shift from moving from modding to doing the game development thing. And as we scale up and we continue to add more stuff, the adding and subtracting of hats is necessary. Being able to quickly pick up new skills and then put them down when you have somebody that's more qualified or more comfortable in that space is a really important skill to the adaptability there, especially at a startup where we're still kind of getting. We've got a pretty good handle on how we're running things. We're also still getting our footing in a couple of spots, and it's like balancing these things together to make sure that we're as efficient as we can manage to be, and get through as many assets to the pipeline, get as many like assets that we need to marketing and to creative, like from creative and to design, and just passing all of this stuff around. Interdepartmental relationships, communication, all that stuff is a big step up from. Yeah, I'll get on Skype in like half an hour,
Yeah, just like, just hit me up when you're up. All right, hey man, I'm up. When you want to meet?
Yeah, like understanding. I think one of the biggest things is like that high trust environment too, right? That this is gonna get done. And if it's not gonna get done, the communication part, right? That's a big one for me, especially coming from like a game like StarCraft 2, where you literally take accountability for everything you do, but you also don't have to answer to anybody in a 1v1 environment either. So it's like, well, I took accountability, I lost the game, whatever, dog. I'll play the next one. But when you work in like a machine, I'm not saying like this is like, no, we are the cogs, but you have to understand that like your actions and the things that you do are meaningful and people rely on you, right? So when you do something, it actually feeds into, the next part of it, and then the next part of it, and then it comes together, and then it's this awesome thing that we all had a contribution in. Um, and then you reap the rewards of that. So anytime that you do slack or put something off or even devalue whatever your contribution is, then it's like, well, somebody else was like, dude, I saw value in that. If you're not really valuing it, then why should I, right? And you have to actually understand that every person in this company has a role, or there's some contribution to be put into this beautiful thing that we're making as a whole, right? So even for me as a community architect, I kind of take different aspects of every piece, and then I kind of get the reaction from the community and then feed it back into the machine and say, oh, this is how what we're doing is getting received. We have a choice to make, right? Like, how are we going to tackle this? People are too busy doing their thing, right? Making this work to be like on the Discord all the time, or communicate like that, to that level. So it's really cool that, when you're able to at least say, hey, this is what's happening. You don't have to worry about that too much. Just keep doing what you're doing, but this is the reaction to it. Um, Now we can make a decision as to how we're going to move forward. And that's like goes back to what you were saying about, hey, do you decide to continue to break the game super duper hard, or do we dial it back a little bit, right? Well, how would we know what to do if the people that we're actually or the people that are consuming, what it is that we are creating are reacting, in a bad way too, right? If they're like, no, man, we don't like this, like Zol setting up hunter traps over, it's just not working. I don't like hunter traps, no, no. somebody has to
Yeah.
be able to at least say that, right? Because I mean, every design, I think, or every design philosophy, right, has a place, but it depends on like how is it received, and just to have more information is always going to be important. And we also have our design philosophy and what we want, but we're adaptable, right? We're not stuck in our ways. So um, just to have more input is really really important, I think, and it's pretty cool. I don't know. I
I'm
think
stuck
it's
in my
pretty
ways. 12 building selection for life. Okay.
I've learned so much, man. Tom said the schedule thing. I've incorporated it into my regular life too. Well,
Mm,
but just like that, I never thought that I had the executive function to do it.
Yeah, I imagine something like the being on time and the schedule comes in super handy and is very pertinent in a setting where you have people that are all over the world and they don't necessarily have your same time where they get up and go to sleep and everything like that. So to make the meetings work, well, there's a certain time that does work, and the rest, they can't really, they can't really bend to your whims, right?
No
so
So
take
yeah,
it.
it's
Big
critical.
one.
We got people all over the time zone area, and so we've also had to adjust our lives and our sleep schedules accordingly. Sometimes it's just
oh
like, hey,
damn,
for the
yeah.
next 6 months, you're going to be working really heavily with people that are in India and New Zealand. Okay,
Hmm.
your sleep schedule is going to be a little bit different, or like you're going to be mostly working with the Europeans, so you're probably going to have later or earlier meetings, right? And we do try
Hmm.
to create company wide systems that make that easier, and we try to make that not happen as much as possible. But at least the founders and most of the leadership, uh, we're super passionate people. We're really really excited to build this game. So if that means that I'm gonna sleep late and stay up late, or wake up early and go to bed early, that's fine with me. That is small potatoes.
All right, all right. I wanted to ask. This is like a bit more of a personal curiosity. You guys make Immortal on the Unreal Engine, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
What's that been like? I imagine now you've gotten real familiar with it. Are there any pain points? I know that there are pain points for me working with Unity, like eternal reloading and the loading taking forever, and a whole bunch of things. Missing documentation or deprecated documentation. Pick your poison.
Yeah, Unreal's a beast. It is also a beast that is not built for RTS. A lot of the friction is kind of coming into adapting what is primarily intended for FPSs and maybe platforming into a top-down, multiple unit selection, high entity count environment that the engine is not optimized for. On the tech side, from the interactions I've had with them, a lot of it is trying to optimize and figure out, like, okay, this is a thing that is very important in shooters and we'll never ever need it. So let's see how much of this we can kind of gut, and how much we can circumvent the way the engine currently works this, and see if we can eke out a good number of frames here. Um, the engine adaptation is probably the biggest hurdle we're kind of running across. Another thing, a very technical thing. Apparently, the inbuilt, like, in-engine tools for creating code and effects is way less efficient than just doing it line by line, which is really good when we have the programmers that can go in
Yeah.
and like put everything in just raw C++. That's super efficient. My C++ is very basic. I want to stay in blueprints, and it means that
Yeah.
I can't dig into deep systems, because if we have something that's running like 5 times less efficient, 20 times a second it doesn't really work anymore.
Right. Yeah, there's some places where you can like make that sacrifice. Otherwise, you're going to be in a tough spot. Yeah. On the flip side, like, unless you guys want to keep digging into that, but on the flip side, what has been some positive sides of Unreal?
We don't have to make an engine.
That's the big one.
That
That's
is a
the big
good one.
I mean, it runs great. Like, oh my god, when you look at the game being played and you play it and you feel it, it
Yeah.
feels great. the game feels
Yeah.
great to play. So
All right.
I can't speak from a like tech side of things, but the hard. I mean, what else? Oh, there must be so much hard work going on, especially from the transition from UE4 to 5.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I heard you guys did that
Travis.
recently.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of under the hood stuff there.
A lot
Yep,
of
a lot of
right?
fun little random bugs that appeared, and we're like, oh, this whole
Yeah.
UI is different than it used to be. I'm like, yep, it's another Unreal 5. It's like, all right, thanks, Toby.
Yeah.
But
So our
like
tech
from
team is awesome, man. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, for
From
sure.
from the outside looking in, I got the impression that it was more of a smooth transition than it is generally switching Unity versions, or at least big amounts of Unity versions. Like I contacted you guys, and then like what was it, like 2 weeks later? I was like, oh yeah, it's pretty much done. I'm like, oh okay.
because what was it? Travis came back and was like, "Oh shit." All right.
Yeah. That was one of those very good situations where we overestimated how much work it was going to be. We prepared we prepared the hell out of the transition and tried to catch a ton of stuff that we figured was going to come at us. And I think ultimately the preparation paid off really well, and we had a really smooth transition.
That's nice. That's nice to hear. All right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, like, now that you guys like are in the game dev world and everything, what is it that you feel like you could impart in terms of wisdom to aspiring game devs out there?
Hmm.
So the two big pieces of advice, it obviously depends on what you're going into, right? Different departments. But the two big things that stick out the most for me is one, do your research, which translates to play a bunch of video games. I know it's a big sacrifice, but you got to do it. The more variety of experiences, the more genres of play, like unironically, like even playing stuff that you're normally like not very comfortable in, and just kind of like getting that experience around a genre or a experience, a tone that you just like don't really normally wouldn't engage with on your own. Having that variety of experiences kind of in your back pocket to draw from and come up with like interesting solutions, kind of cross over like two things from two totally different worlds, that can yield some really impressive results. So like really building up that repertoire of familiarity with games in general can't be understated. The For design in particular, something that was very helpful to me was looking at, or whenever you're going through your day, going to work, going down to the store, just be cognizant of the world, because most things are the way they are for a reason. Some dude had to sit down and be like, how long should these lines be? Should they be yellow or white? How many should them be? 2 or 3? Like somebody had to make those decisions, right? Getting into the habit of trying to put yourself in that person's head and figuring out, why did they do this one thing instead of this other thing? Or like why not blue? Or why not like bright cyan? Um, Getting into that habit is a really good mental exercise for problem solving and being able to analyze real world applications of design questions. Why there are 2 white lines or 2 yellow lines on the road instead of 1 burnt orange line probably isn't going to be directly applicable, but the thought process, like the way that you think, will be applicable to solving all kinds of different design problems and figuring out like different gameplay patterns and just like thinking through that process.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a question of being efficient in the things that you do. You don't want to be reinventing the wheel every step of the way. You want to be using efficient methods and techniques and probably seeing quicker, faster ways to do things that have the same result, and also recognizing like some of the good choices that were made by your forefathers, right? They did them for a reason, and a lot of the time that reason is that it's the best way, right? So that's really good. I like that. All right. Who else? Words of wisdom for future devs.
Jeez. I'll say, because I'm not a dev in the sense of the game itself, but the environment that you are, creating when you make your game, right? Really respecting the people that are interested in what it is that you're creating, right? So
Mm.
even as someone that, so I'm like a music guy, right? And a lot of the times it's like creative. No, this is me. It's my self-expression. Doesn't matter what anybody says, no. But when it comes to a space where you are creating something for the masses, right? You have such an amazing pool or just this vast world that is interested or maybe not interested, right? So you don't only look at the people that are interested in it. You kind of say, why is it that people are not interested in this, right? And then you start to think about it. Is it too hard? Are the colors too dreary? Maybe they don't like blood and guts, right? Like you have to take all these things into consideration as to like what audience I'm trying to reach, but also why is it that the audience that I'm not reaching is not being reached, right? So really being I guess cognizant of that too, instead of saying, nah man, it's for hardcore gamers, this is what, and setting the standard and this is what it is, this is esports, right? You're not making a game to be the next esport, you're making a game to be the next cool game that you decided to make. And you try to like look at the not the positives all the time, but say, hey, there's a reason why X person is not interested in this, and look into it. Research and say why not. Why? How can I make this person interested in it? You know, uh, that's one thing that I've learned as a community architect is like just being able to at least express or at least know why or understand to my best ability as to why people like things and why people don't, and then hopefully get more people to like it.
Yeah, I get that. Being a little bit more introspective and
Mhm.
inquisitive about the world. I get that. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Yeah, I think a lot of things, so many things. Let's say probably one of the more useful things that I've found so far um, is how to judge things without being judgmental, which is a weird little trick. Um, it ultimately starts for me with the remembering that everyone's got a story and everyone was a baby at one point that was totally helpless and didn't get to make any of their choices and didn't get to pick where they were born or how they were born or what brain and body they got and all that other stuff. And then a whole bunch of stuff happened to them and they made the best calls that they could, and all that led them to this moment that they're at right now. And you can judge that in that you can say, oh, okay, these experiences, they lead to this thing. This person is having these experiences with our game. They feel this certain way. Okay, all right, here's a pattern. We can judge that, right? But not going to that person and thinking and putting some kind of a label on them, which is like, oh yeah, oh, that's a hardcore gamer. Like, oh yeah, that's a casual. It's like, no, hold on a second. We're very complex people. And sometimes I want to sit down and play a game of chess like I'm like in the chess world championships and every single move's got to be perfect. And sometimes it's the end of the day and I just want to play a bunch of blitz games and see if I can make some wacky tactics work out. It's like uh just saying, just meeting people where they are and being like, all right, this is this person. This is where they're at. This is an example of the human experience. Learn something from it. This is a valid human experience. They're all valid human experiences because we're all people.
All right. All right. Right on. So this is the part of the video where you guys get to plug away. So what do you guys want to plug?
All right. I'll actually, it should be Kwame, to be fair, community architect. Not to if someone's gonna do see, this is about letting go. This is about taking off this hat, right? Normally I would be but I fade into the background.
All right. You still have that reflex, huh?
Yeah, I do.
Jeez.
No, yeah.
Well, there's so many things, right? Of course, Sunspear games, man. They saved my life. I was on the side of the street and they picked me up, coddled me, made me the man that I am today. And I'm very thankful for them. Definitely, the Discord, Sunspear, or at least the Immortal Gates of Pyre Discord is such an awesome place. Even for people that don't play the game or have a key right now, it's just a really nice place to hang out,
Mm.
talk about a lot of cool stuff, and also you might have a chance to get a key as well to play our awesome game. But I got to give a definitely big shout out to all of the team, like geez, every single team in this company, right? The art team, design, creative, the different pieces that really bring this game together, and also just the whole, right? The fact that it all comes
Mm.
together, we all sync up to be on the same page. The social media as well. That would be Gates of Pyre on Twitter.
Yeah.
I believe we have a TikTok as well. Check us out on Instagram. We got a Facebook as well. I'm sure all the links will be in the description of this video as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, definitely that. And bam. Follow Jack
All right.
Attack at I am MVP on Twitter.
I am OGS Prime.
I am OGS Prime.
All right. Sweet. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for answering my questions and taking the time to talk to me. It's been really great. And
Thank you,
we'll
Tatsu.
see. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This has been
no
great.
problem.
It's been fun.
I really do.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully we can do this again. We'll see how this video does and everything. But I hope that it gets a ton of traction and gets you guys a lot of attention because y'all have been great and this was really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Well, we can
Yeah,
get
man.
some more players for Sanctuary RTS. Let's do it.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.